But first, Africa's trade with China is worth around $200 billion a year, 3 times more business than India does with the continent. But with China's economic growth slowing, is it a chance for India to narrow the gap? Shilpa Kannan has more from Delhi. Wooing Africa with a big, noisy and colourful welcome. This is the biggest diplomatic event India has ever hosted. And there's reason for the fuss. Annual trade between India and Africa has gone up from $3 billion in 2000 to about $70 billion today. But India's Africa ties lag far behind China. So India is hoping to use summits like this one to engage with Africa even more. While India cannot match China's deep pockets, it's wooing Africa for the same reasons as its Asian rival. As India's economy takes off again, its need for natural resources will steadily mount. And with China's growth slowing, many here see this as an opportunity for India to narrow that gap. Already, India is buying oil from Nigeria, Algeria, Mozambique and Angola. But experts forecast that Africa's oil supply to India will only grow further.
India obviously is now having a huge focus on Africa. If you see last 1 year, Nigeria has become one of the top oil exporter to India, right? And Angola, we don't hear much about Angola, but Angola is the second largest, right? So in terms of, the oil need for India, India will have to look for these kind of things. Given the kind of political situation in the, in the world, I think this summit will help forge some of those alliances.
Good morning everyone in Africa.
And this is what India offers to Africa in return. Using a satellite link, teachers sitting in Delhi are working with students in Africa to promote distance learning. The Pan-African e-network, an Indian government project to connect students, opens up the African market to Indian universities.
The African market is $2 billion, growing at 10 to 15% per annum. And for Amity as a group, we plan to open up about 10 more campuses in the next 5 years. So it makes it a huge market and huge potential for any player in the education market who is looking at Africa in a serious manner.
And it's not just students. Thousands of Africans head to India every year for medical procedures that cannot be done locally, with Indian hospitals quick to tap into this market. Providing translators and easy service, hospitals here say they have an edge over China.
Unlike China, there are a lot of edges that we have. For example, the talent pool. The doctors of India obviously have created a mark for themselves all over the world. Language being another benefit that we have. English, is something that Indian doctors, everybody is very proficient with. So that actually adds a lot for us to grow and a lot of innovation happening in India. So for us, transporting that into another country and making an impact is much easier.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi sent bespoke waistcoats, his signature sleeveless jacket to every African head of state he hosted. But can India go beyond photo ops to replace China in Africa? I met Ashish Thakkar of the Mara Group, a Pan-African company which has businesses ranging from telecoms infrastructure to hotels, and began by asking him if summits like this can make a difference.
I think they do, as long as there's measurable things that come out of it, right? It's great. Even the dialogue itself, even with our leaders, I think in the history, I don't think we've had so many African heads of state stroke leaders come to India. So I think that itself is a huge signifying thing. People need to take note that African leaders are one now. We're coming together. We're not coming in isolation. We're talking as one voice as a continent. And that is a lot more powerful than a population of 30-40 million versus a population of over 1 billion people.
But China has always been the strong factor in Africa. And do you think India can really replace China now that China's growth is slowing and demand for resources in Africa is going down?
I don't think China is going to drastically slow down in Africa, because that's where growth is still happening, and that's what they need more of now more than ever. They need areas of investment that will actually create huge sustainable growth. Africa is a big area for that. I think that doesn't carve out the space for India. I think the opportunity in Africa is so large and so real that there's a huge gap as well. Into Africa investments are drastically increasing too. But saying all of this, there is that opportunity, and that's the exciting thing about Africa. 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are still in Africa.
India has always spoken about its past with Africa, how many Indians have gone there, settled down, built successful businesses like your family. So do you think India has an easier route to kind of invest in Africa?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, my family left India in 1890. We left Gujarat and went to Africa. My grandparents and parents were born in Africa. We don't have any family in India. Culturally, we're still very Indian, of course. But identity-wise, I mean, we're very African. But that's something that can be really taken advantage of, and we're not the only ones. There's many families like that. But I also think Silk routes, historical ties, etc., and the fact that India really does understand and has been through a similar growth pattern that they can really take advantage of. There's a lot they can learn from Africa, but there's also a lot they can give to Africa.
India has been saying that it wants what it calls a brotherly partnership with Africa, as opposed to China's more single-minded approach in Africa. So do you think this really makes a difference? Because India is talking about African solutions to African problems.
I think the hands-off approach does make sense. African solutions for African problems absolutely is the way we want it. So knowledge transfer, technology transfer, things of that nature is hugely beneficial. But we are looking for partnerships. We're not trying to do it for ourselves, and I think we realize that there are certain things we can leapfrog in the true sense. Regulation-wise, you've seen mobile money, 43% of Kenya's GDP is pumped through mobile money. That isn't the case in India so far. We've been able to leapfrog that in Kenya than India has. So there's things that we can learn from each other, but when you think about the leapfrogging effect, the fact that regulation is so open-minded and so advanced in that respect, there's so many things that can be done in a meaningful manner that will create huge impact, make a difference to so many lives, but actually do good and do well at the same time.
Now, as the weather cools down and with the monsoon rains gone, we're entering India's peak tourist season.